Hello. It's time for the devotional. I am a little late today, of course, and I didn't get on yesterday. Things just came up, and I wasn't able to get on yesterday. But and nevertheless, here we are now. I'm going to do a quick devotional, and then hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to get back to regular routine, and I'll be on tomorrow. But anyway, let's take a look at our text today. We've been working our way through chapter 5 of Proverbs, one verse at a time, and we arrive now at the last verse of the book of Proverbs, chapter 5. Chapter 5. So this one contained unit of chapter 5, which is talking so much about marriage and about staying loyal, is written to a young man. So from that perspective, staying loyal to your spouse, to your wife. And so we've been working our way through that and all the steps. We get to these last three sentences, which are an explanation or an encouragement to realize that God is watching. So for all the other things that were said at the very end, at least realize this: God is watching you in your marriage. And so with that in mind, live well, because God's going to be the ultimate judge of your marriage and the vows and the covenant that you have with your wife. And so let that motivate you. If nothing else that was in the chapter does, and let that motivate you. And by the time we get to the chapter to verse 23, it says this. It says, referring to the man who decides to not be faithful to his wife, it says, he will die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly, he will go astray. So just to reemphasize that, he will die for lack of instruction. This idea that, the bad end, the really bad end comes because of this lack of instruction. And in the greatness of his foolishness, his folly, he will go astray. It's a very foolish man that decides to abandon his marriage covenant. The idea here of lack of instruction, it's kind of, once again, with so many of these statements in Proverbs, it's parallelism, right? It's two statements together. They're kind of saying the same point from different angles. It's like, lack of instruction is the same as great folly. And the idea here of lack of instruction is the idea of failing to accept instruction. That's the idea behind it. Some translations will say for a lack of discipline, I believe it says, for lack of discipline, like the person doesn't discipline themselves to hear and learn and grow. And so it's like, that's great foolishness. And that's the idea here, is living your married life, right? To decide that I'm not going to take any instructions. I'm just going to live however I feel. I'm just going to not discipline myself in my marriage at all, is the same as great foolishness. And it does. It ends in death. It ends in going astray. It ends in the train wreck. And that's what this verse is kind of saying. And just it's wrapping up the chapter with this in light of God watching. So it's like, if you don't watch, you don't learn, you don't discipline yourself, you don't work at your marriage, then it's great foolishness, and God himself will be the overseer of that tragic end. So you don't want that. You want a good end. And so that's the idea here. It's another way, I guess, maybe a kind of a funny way to say it in our culture might be this last verse of chapter 5 might be like a way of saying, smarten up, smarten up, fly straight. Like this, don't be an idiot. That's obviously not the way it says it there, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, just come on, guys, like, just with your marriages, smarten up, fly straight. It also brings me back in memory of this statement, the whole idea of there's no such thing as a bad student, only bad teachers, which I don't agree with at all. I think there are bad students. And this is kind of saying that for a student that doesn't take the instruction, it's a bad student, right? You're being a fool. Like, learn. Like, bad students don't want to learn. Good students want to learn. They want to learn. So they try to learn the subject matter. And I guess that's another way to understand this verse, is just that be the good student with regard to your marriages. Why are so many people, when it comes to our marriages, why are we so averse to instruction? I wonder. It's like we have some sort of a pride or an embarrassment that comes along when we think, I'm struggling in my marriage, but I don't want to get any help, right? I'm not going to talk to anybody about it. And it's like, well, maybe you should, like, why are we so resistant to that? And I guess we're afraid that if I have to get help figuring out how to be a good husband, then it means I'm not a good husband. But that's kind of a funny way to think. Like, well, if you don't get help being a good husband, you probably won't be a good husband. Like, learn at the very least from your own dad, if he's at all helpful, or from the scriptures. Like, come to the Bible and learn. Like, this idea that sometimes when people get into marital struggles, and they don't want to have anybody come in and help them because I know it's very personal. It's hard. I understand that. But even on aside from marital counseling, just having someone in your life who can help, a mentor, an older person who's been through marriage, just helping you learn is a really good thing to do. To get instruction, to learn how to discipline yourself so that you can improve your marriage. And just so that it can be said, there's no shame in the fact that a person may struggle in making their marriage good, like making their marriage pleasant. There's no shame in that because all humans are going to have difficulties in relationships. It's just a part of being human in this fallen world, is that we step on each other's toes. We don't always understand each other correctly. We require patience with one another, or else we just won't have any relationships that work. Um, Sometimes people go to get marriage counseling, or they do have a friend they talk to, and they're not really there to get counsel. They're there instead just to get an ally, someone to be on their side, and that's not the way to face it either. It's more from the idea of just, I really want to do better. Now this proverb, chapter 5, is written to men. So let me say this to men specifically. Although as a woman, you can apply this to your life too. But let me just say it to men, as a man to a man. If you're listening to me today, with the area of temptation, as this chapter is very specifically focusing on, let me give you some advice from this chapter. In the area of temptation, think about it this way: there is no man who is above temptation. So don't be too arrogant. Don't be arrogant about yourself. No, there's no man, no human being who is above temptation. Temptation doesn't touch you. That's not true. You have to realize you have weaknesses. Then secondly, realize that temptation comes in all kinds of different forms. It's not always the sort of fantasy succubus kind of demonic temptation it's not always that kind of thing. It can be very subtle. It can be very, very subtle. It can be just that person at work who gives you compliments all the time and always thinks you're such a great guy. And you can find, even if that person isn't doing anything wrong, you could still be tempted. And so be on your guard. Always be on your guard. You have a covenant with your wife. Be on your guard. Don't think I'm above temptation. Well, no, you're vulnerable in some spot of your life, and temptation comes in lots of forms. So just always be on your guard. Guard your marriage. You want to learn and grow in how to guard your marriage so that you won't be the fool who wanders away, who strays off, right? And don't let yourself ever think that you're strong enough to resist temptation. You are not strong enough to resist temptation. The Bible never teaches us to be people who resist temptation. We're supposed to run away from temptation because we're not strong enough. It's tempting for a reason. So you run away from it. You get away, and you don't in any way think, oh, I'm tough enough. No, you're not. If you're tough enough, then great. The thing is, run away. Be that tough to run away from any temptation to fail in your marriage covenants. Always and quickly run away from the temptation and redirect yourself back to your wife, especially if you've been going through times of difficulty in your marriage, because then you're going to be even more vulnerable and the temptations can be even more insidious. So come back to your wife and build your relationship with your wife. Don't be the fool. Don't do that. Instead, gain knowledge and learn and commit and come back to your wife over and over. Just keep coming back to your wife. And even if it's a struggle sometimes, that's okay. All relationships have struggle. So just push through the struggle. Endure through the struggle. Make it better. So there's my advice to men. I think that kind of is a big part of what this chapter is saying to men. And now for women, this is kind of transferable. I know women are different in how they approach things, but it's transferable concepts. And so you can apply it as you see fit, however you feel that fits to you. But I will say this as a word of advice to women today. Don't be discouraged if your husband is occasionally tempted. That's just part of the human condition. You also have temptations. They may be different, and maybe you don't see them the same, whatever, but you also have temptations. So have understanding, but then just reward your husband when every time he turns to you and comes to you and tries to build that relationship with you. build back too, and reward that. You want a husband who's faithful, want a husband who comes to you. And so yes, I'm with you. And don't look for opportunities to I told you so, or to make them feel bad or anything like this. Like, reward the good behavior, so to speak. Not that men are like puppies, but I guess in some ways we sometimes are. But just reward that and encourage that as well from your side. And you're just going to build your relationship so much stronger together. Anyway, that's my advice. I think this is what chapter 5 has been about. Next time, tomorrow, we will start chapter 6, and we're going to go into some interesting little paragraphs that have some new ideas that we haven't really covered yet in Proverbs. So hopefully we'll see that tomorrow. In the meantime, I just pray today, God bless all the marriages that are represented by the watchers of this video. Please bless each marriage, protect them from temptation, help them strengthen their marriage. In Jesus' name. God bless you. See you next time.